Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to the Inspired and Empowered Living TV show on W4WN.com, Talk4TV.com, and my YouTube channel. We're live Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. So glad that you're here joining us. And we have Allie in the house. Good morning. And today we will be talking about how to have healthy, clear communication. And in order to have joyful, loving relationships, all relationships, you need to have healthy, clear communication. Healthy, clear communication is an essential ingredient in healthy relationships. Join me to learn how to have more successful interactions with others. Discover how to have healthy, clear communication that can help you create an inspired and empowered life. And we have Carol in the house. Hello, hi all. Great, important health topic. Welcome, Carol. Together, let's create a life you love. I'm your host, Nanci Deutsch, licensed clinical social worker and certified intuitive coach and hypnotherapist. And we're so glad to have you all. This show is not a replacement for therapy or counseling, but is for educational purposes only. And I see that we have Jana in the house. Hi, Nanci, I need this. And we have Marie in the house. Good morning, Marie. Well, I just really want to welcome you all. So glad that you're here joining us today. So during the show, I really want to encourage any of you, if you have any questions that come up as we're talking, please type the questions in the chat. I really want to hear from you and I really want to answer your questions. And if you're listening or viewing at a later time, you can always go back to my YouTube and put the questions in later. Steps to healthy, clear communication. The first step is really being clear on what are your wants, what are your needs, and what is it that you want to communicate. It's really important to be really clear. What is it that you want to communicate? And so that is the first thing that's really important. And Carol asked, Carol said, Nanci is an absolute expert in the essential field of health. Thank you so much, Carol. So grateful to you. Thank you. Thank you. So it's really important for you to be really clear on what it is you want to communicate. Now, what happens in relationships, in interactions, when you are in connection with someone, very easily you may notice that you have an emotional reaction. So how do you know that you have an emotional reaction? You all of a sudden start to feel angry, Or maybe you start to feel fearful, intimidated. You start feeling really small and feeling like you want to run and hide. Or maybe you end up being in freeze mode. Now, what I'm actually talking about is the fight, flight, and freeze response, the stress response. And what happens in relationships is so often that gets triggered, especially as you are in relationship, and the closer you are to someone, the more easily the trigger can happen. And I will also tell you that sometimes people trigger you on an unconscious, subconscious level. And especially if you're close with them, they can do it subconsciously to poke you or to trigger you or to get a reaction from you. So it's really important to understand what's your stuff and what's their stuff. So as I said, if anybody has any questions as I'm talking, so I also want to do my quick Psych 101 lesson, because it's going to be really important in this conversation and discussion that we're having about communication. When you have healthy, clear communication, you're coming from your conscious, healthy adult self. And I would even venture to say your higher self. Now, your healthy, conscious adult self is at choice, and it's making a choice to respond. And you're making a conscious decision whether to speak to someone in that moment or not. Then you have your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind are all the beliefs, all the issues, everything that has happened to you from in utero, from the moment you were conceived to present time, including other lifetimes and your ancestors. And what very often happens is when you find yourself in an emotional reaction, you have gotten triggered. And when you get triggered, you are not in present time. You're not being conscious. You're acting from your subconscious or your unconscious mind. And sometimes you don't even know that you may be doing that. How many of you know about anger and how anger can play out in relationships? So you can have an aggressive, if you are reacting to somebody and all of a sudden you feel really angry and you snap at them or you scream at them or you yell at them, that's acting out your anger. Or if you end up wanting to run and hide, this is what I was talking about, the stress reaction before, is running and hide, fleeing the situation. That's when you feel intimidated or you start feeling really small and you regress to an earlier time. And then there's also what happens with a freeze reaction. A freeze where you just shut down, you go numb, and you want to say something, and then all of a sudden you just can't. Now, I'm going to give you an example of Jenny and Jimmy. Jenny and Jimmy were a couple that I had worked with. What happened was Jenny had a lot of trauma from her childhood. Her father was an alcoholic, and he was a rager. And Jenny had so much trauma that when she met Jimmy, what happened is when you meet somebody, whether it's a partner or a friend or a coworker or someone who triggers you, and they're triggering that old reaction, whether it's the fighting, the fleeing, or the freezing, when someone triggers that, it's really important for you to come into your awareness that you have been triggered. Because the more aware you are, then you can take the actions you need to take to help yourself heal and clear the energies before you can have healthy communication. What I coach couples is I say, do not interact, do not engage. If you know that you're in a reaction and you are triggered, do not engage the other person because it will not end in a healthy, productive way. You're better off being able to take a time out, I call it, and take time to be able to process anything that you need to process so that you can then come back with a healthy, clear communication, knowing what you want to say in healthy, clear ways. So Jenny and Jimmy was raised by a father who also was a rager too. And so what would happen in the relationship is that Jimmy would end up raging and Jenny would end up freezing. And what happens is Jenny would end up feeling attacked. She would feel frustrated. She really was ready to leave the relationship. She really didn't know what to do anymore. And Jimmy, what happened for him is that he was having a lot of stress at work. And then he was dumping his stress because Jenny was the safe place. So basically, both were acting out their triggers, their reactions from their childhood. And that's what happens in relationships. When you get triggered, more often than not, if you're in a trigger, you have regressed to an earlier state, an earlier time in your life. And again, if any of you have any questions in the chat, if any of you have any instances or examples you'd like to share, anything that you would like to share around this topic. So the first thing that is really important is coming into that awareness, really becoming aware that you have been triggered, that you have something that you need to communicate. Now, what happens is as you start to process your information and you learn that you've been triggered by something that happened a long time ago in your childhood, and the present person in your life, whether it's your partner, a close friend, or an acquaintance, or a coworker, or someone that you do business with. It could be anybody, okay? So I just want to make this really clear that you could get triggered by anybody, any situation, any relationship. And for you, the first step is the awareness, oh, I've been triggered. And maybe I've gone into fight mode. Maybe I've gone into flight. I just want to get the hell out of here. I don't even want to deal with this person anymore. Or you freeze and you shut down and you go numb and you want to say something and you can't. So any of those reactions are possible. So the awareness is the first step. So Jana asked the question, how do you know your person is triggered if they won't answer you? So first of all, that's a great question. Thank you, Jana. If a person is triggered and they're not answering you, it may be because if you're in person, and the person has almost like a look in their eyes like they're not present, they've been triggered. There's almost like it's like when you have been triggered from your past, you are totally, you're not present. You're not in present time. You're in the past or in the future, but more often in the past when you've gotten triggered by something that has happened. So if they're not answering you, more than likely they have been triggered in some way. So that's an important thing to remember. So instead of, if someone is not answering you, instead of continuing to say, well, answer me, or please answer me, I need a question. So what I would suggest is perhaps maybe you need to give them some space. And maybe you take a deep breath for you, because you may not even realize what you have, how you've triggered them, or what has happened for you. And so breathing and just knowing, again, this is really important in learning what's yours and what's theirs. And that also is a process unto its own. Learning to not take other people's issues, other people's challenges personally. Now, however, sometimes in relationships, it's also really important when you come back together to listen to what a person says, because there may be a way that you are relating to them or to others that has triggered them, that you notice a pattern in your life, and then that's yours. And so it's really important to be able to weed out what's yours, what's theirs. So if someone is not answering you, I would support you in saying, I don't know what's going on for you right now, but I really do want to communicate with you. And do you need space? And if they're not answering you at all, so you may need to say, you know what, let me give you some space. Let's both take a time out. And then why don't we schedule a time to come back together to be able to really to communicate when we're both able to. And just, Jana, let me know if there's any other questions about that answer, or if you found that helpful or anything. So love to hear. And Carol says, great question, Jana. People are now ghosting people instead of resolving conflict, Nanci. Can you address this current phenomenon? Okay. So what happens is, first of all, I mean, most of you may know what ghosting is, but ghosting basically is when someone they're not answering. They're just not answering, not getting back to you. It's like they've left the conversation. And so, Carol, what pops in my head about that is a couple of things. I don't think that a lot of people have been taught healthy communication skills, number one. Number two, being able to communicate in a healthy, clear, appropriate way takes work, and it takes time. It's being able to work within and know your issues, and then being able to work with somebody else and to connect with another person and be able to have that healthy, clear communication. Healthy, clear communication takes work. But I can't even begin to tell you how amazing, how powerful, and how healing it is when you do your work and they do theirs, and then you come together in healthy communication. And what happens is intimacy grows. And I was talking about intimacy on the last shows, and I love this. I don't know where it originally came from. It's into me, I see, intimacy. And every time you become more intimate with someone in your life, you learn more about yourself. And so intimacy grows. So being able to have healthy, clear communication takes work. Now, if someone is ghosting you, either A, they don't want to do the work, maybe they don't even know they need to do the work. Maybe, and the other thing that's coming to me is sometimes people don't even know they're in trauma. And really, what we're talking about here is learning to heal your issues and heal your trauma, your limiting beliefs, your emotions about what happened to you when you were a child, and how you learn to communicate. And most of us, I will just tell you, came from families that was not healthy communication. Most of us came from very unhealthy communicative families where emotions were acted out, like anger. And so anger, you can have aggressive, you can have somebody who's an intimidator is aggressive. Somebody who's a rager is aggressive. Then you have somebody who wants to run and hide. They regress and they feel really small. And there are people who are passive aggressive who, they forgot to pick up the milk, or they forgot to pick up, or they forgot to do something because they're acting out, because they're afraid of the aggression. And so they become passive aggressive. But passive aggressive is also acting out anger in a different way. And so it's really important to learn how to deal with yourself and your life and your own emotions, especially anger, in healthy ways. Because anger is one of the most, it's really could be the most destructive relationship. Like it can really destroy a relationship, or it can actually create, when it's dealt with in healthy, appropriate ways, it can really change a whole relationship. And you go from maybe feeling bored or not satisfied to feeling passionate and alive. That's the power of transformation and transforming your emotions and the things that happen for you. So ghosting is multi-leveled. And really the bottom line is that usually when someone ghosts, they're in their trauma, and either A, they don't want to deal with it, or they don't know how to deal with it. And they don't even know how to continue. And I'm also going to say that because of COVID, I think that I think the energy of what's going on in the world has created more and more trauma. And where people were able to perhaps do things where they once were able to, their ability to deal with situations has gotten more and more limited. And so if it's an important relationship, you may want to try reaching out. But again, you can't make somebody respond to you if they're not willing. So hopefully that was helpful, Carol. And it's a situation that is going on. And I think it's because of the rise in the energy of the trauma that's going on individually and collectively. So, and hopefully that you can find people that are willing to heal and to deal with their relationships and their relationships with you in healthy, more appropriate ways, so that you can have people who you can interact with and really have major transformation happens when you find those people in your life. So let me know if that was helpful at all. I know Jana says, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Jana. Carol says, excellent response. Thank you. And thank you for the questions. Love the questions. So again, if anybody has any more questions, continue to ask them. I love answering questions. So the first thing is being aware, and the next thing is really being clear in what you want to say to someone. Now, if you're in an ongoing relationship and your needs and wants are not being met, and it's really important to learn how to communicate what it is you need, what it is you want, and in a healthy, clear way. Because what happens sometimes in a relationship is you may act out and they may act out. And then what ends up happening is you're both not getting your needs met. But if you learn what it is you want, now I'm just going to say a lot of you who are listening to the show or viewing the show are givers. You are givers, and you give out and you give out and you give out. Now, I've had many clients that I've worked with that have ended up getting angry. They've gotten angry at their partners. They've gotten angry at friends because they're like, why aren't they doing this? Or why aren't they doing that? And I said to them, and I'll give you an example. Thelma came to me, and she was in a relationship. She had a really good friend, Emily. And Emily and Thelma were in this relationship, and Thelma would say, I don't understand. Why doesn't she think that I need this? Or why doesn't she do this? And I said to her, Thelma, did you ever ask Emily? And Thelma said, no, I didn't. And she had this light bulb moment go off that she was really angry at Emily. And she was really upset with her friend because she was expecting Emily to read her mind. And this is a very common misconception that happens in relationships, is that if you think the other person is a mind reader, they are not. And even if you are really close and connected, whether it's a spouse or a partner or a really close friend, you think they should just know. Well, you know what? They don't. And it's really important. And maybe on some level they do know. But if you don't ask, it's really important in relationships to have 100% responsibility for both people in that relationship need to have 100% responsibility. You take responsibility for your part, and they need to take responsibility for theirs. And if that person is if you are not getting your needs met, and then you're getting angry at them, the first question that would be helpful for you to ask yourself is, have I asked them to get my needs met? Now, if you have, and have you asked them in a healthy, appropriate way? So it's really important to be able to communicate in those healthy, appropriate ways. So what do I mean by healthy, appropriate ways? And I'm going to go over this more. But a healthy, appropriate way is you need to make sure that you're not shaming, blaming, dumping, raging, screaming, yelling, manipulating, controlling, guilting. All of those are unhealthy behaviors that you or the other person can do that can destroy communication. And so it's really important that when you're communicating from that adult or the higher self. And the higher self is this wise, unconditionally loving part of you. It's this part that is coming from a very clear, high space. Now, most of us may not necessarily think higher self. But if you're coming, how do you know that you're in the adult self? How do you know that you're ready to communicate? When you process through enough of the anger, the rage, the grief, the guilt, the shame, all of these emotions, the fear can damper communications. When you processed enough that you're not going to act out your emotions on the other person. So if you're still in a rage or in an upset in some way or other, do not engage. It's better for you to process through your stuff and then connect with them at a later time so that you can have clearer, healthy communication. And then you'll be able to move forward from that. And so you have the awareness, you are clearer on what your wants and your needs are, and you're communicating that. You remember, you do not want to you them. No name calling, because that is not going to help. That is acting out. You don't want to use somebody, because remember, every time you use when you do this, you're so stupid, or you're so lazy, or you're so you don't hear me, or what's wrong with you? Any kind of energy like that is going to shut the other person down. They will go on the defensive. So it's really, really important for you to be able to come from a healthier place so that when you communicate, and you want to communicate in I language, and you want to focus on the behavior, not the person. And what I mean by that is, like when you were a kid, if your parents called you, oh, you were such a bad girl, or you were such a bad boy, or you were so, or why did you do that? That was so stupid. Why are you being so stupid? Any kind of energy like that will shame somebody, will humiliate the other person, and shuts them down immediately, because that's what happened to you when you were a kid. And so it's really important that you don't want to come from that place of communication. You want to come from the open heart. That's being the adult, that's being the higher self, and come from a calmer, more peaceful place, or a place of curiosity, or wanting to understand what happened with the other person. Those are all ways that you can look at the conversation in a different way, so that you're not acting out your energy. So, and because when you act out your energy, the other person will pick it up, and they can immediately go into their own reaction, and communication shuts down. So really important to have, and to be able, when you didn't respond to me, I felt really hurt. Or I felt really hurt when I didn't hear from you. Healthy, appropriate communication. And Carol has a question. Can you describe how you process your stuff? Okay, I can describe how I process my stuff. All right, so let me think of a situation. I'm going to give you a situation that happened to me years ago, but it's a really powerful situation. I was sharing an office space with a few people, and the person, my coworker, the person who was sharing the office space with me, he put up this huge sign, like it was really big, a big sign in the office, in our shared space. And it was like front and center and really felt like it took up the whole room for me. And I got really triggered. I got so angry. And I got really angry, and I could feel this energy of rage that happened for me. And I said, okay, this is not the time for me to be communicating with him because I do not want to act out. So I became really aware that I needed to process this and understand what was this coming from before I communicated with him. So I processed the information, and what I realized was that it was triggering an energy of feeling violated, an energy that was triggering an old issue of feeling abused. And hence, that's why I felt the rage. Because what happens is when an old issue comes up for you, especially if it's out of proportion to the situation, it's triggering an old issue. And when I realized that it was triggering my abuse issues, I did healing around that, the person who was the source of the issue. Now, I may have been annoyed at him or, a little frustrated or whatever, but the emotional reaction, I'm going to say reaction, was way out of proportion to the situation. And so I knew it was coming from the past. And that's what happens. When you have that intense, like I said, when you have the intense emotional reaction, you are definitely getting triggered from your past. So I processed the issue that I needed to. I worked on processing my energy around my own abuse and the violation. And when I processed enough of it so that I could go back to him and communicate in a healthy way, which I did. Now, here's the thing. I really want you to all know, depending on the relationship, you choose how much information you choose to share. If it's a relationship that like this person was a co-worker, she shared, I chose not to share my intimate details of what was being triggered for me. I chose to share what was coming up for me. And so basically what I said to him was, I'm feeling really uncomfortable with the sign being where it is. Can you put it more over to the side, your side of the room? And he was like, fine. And that was fine. If it was somebody who I was in an intimate relationship, whether a partner or a close friend, I would want to share perhaps more of the details. This is what I got triggered, and this is what I need. That's healthy communication. And that's the process that I have before I communicate to those in my life. And whether that's a close friend or a family member, or even somebody, a person that I'm in a work relationship with. Really important to have that clear communication so that you can continue to move forward in the relationship rather than shutting it down. So Carol says, fascinating. Thank you, Carol. Anybody else want to ask anything? Feel free. So, and then here's the thing. You also want to trust your intuition. I'm all about intuition. So when you're in a relationship with someone, you want to trust your intuition when it's the right time. There are right times to communicate and there are not right times. And if you're getting a gut feeling, don't go there right now. You need to listen to that. Because I know from my past and from many of my clients, I can't even begin to tell you how many clients have said to me, I kind of felt like I shouldn't communicate that, and I did, and it blew up in my face. You know intuitively, your gut or that feeling sense or the knowing sense says to you either this is not a good time or it may be not the right person. If you feel like you're not going to get a reaction that's going to be supportive, or if you're communicating and you're doing your part and you're communicating in a healthy way and the person is just ghosting you, like what Carol was asking about, then you need to really look at, is this even a person that you would even want to be in a relationship with? Because if they're not willing to show up enough, then do you really want to have that relationship? You want to be able to find people where you can have that healthy, dynamic, juicy, amazing, intimate conversation and communication to really transform yourself, your life, because that's what happens. When you have healthy, clear communication, that's how relationships transform. And you can take your relationship from an ordinary relationship to an extraordinary one. And last few shows, I did a quote from Gay and Kathleen Hendricks from their book Conscious Loving. I don't have the quote in front of me, but basically, we are on new frontiers, because what was modeled to us when we were growing up is not healthy communication. And you who are listening to this show, viewing this show, thank you all here that have joined in today. You are the leaders of a new frontier, of a healthier frontier of communicating and learning how to communicate in ways that will bring a new world, a new earth. Yes, I mean, it starts with you. And I know I'm going big here, but you are the beginning. And when you start learning how to communicate in healthier ways, and that includes healthier communication with yourself, healthy, clear communication with yourself, it starts with you. What are you saying to yourself? How are you talking to yourself? What's that self-talk? And then being able to do that in your relationships, and then in your communities, and then being able to know that that can be taken out into the world. And so I really want to support all of you, that knowing that you can do it. So today we covered learning more about your triggers, where you're going to come from, being able to have that awareness of what your triggers are, so that then you can have that healthy communication. And we talked about the stress reaction, the fight, flight, freeze that happens in relationships, and being able to start having those healthier communications. And I am going to continue this conversation and discussion. Next week, we'll do a part 2 on this, because this is such an important, crucial topic. So we'll have part 2 of healthy, clear communication. And I really want to thank all of you. Thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful that you came, that you asked your questions, that you are present here, whether you're tuning in live or at a later time. And whether you're listening or viewing, I'm really grateful that you're here. And I really want to wish you. We're going to be live next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can join my YouTube station, my YouTube channel, and you can also join on w4wn.com and talk4tv.com. And I really want to say thank you all. And we have Marie says, excellent. Thank you, Nanci. Carol says, healthy relationships is now linked to longevity. Thank you, Nanci. Thank you, Carol. And Allie said, thank you, Nanci. And I want to thank you all. And I wish you all an inspired and empowered week and an inspired and empowered day. Have a great one, everybody. Bye for now.